Welcome to Ladies Who Lead podcast.
I am Dr. Lindsey Tavakolian. I'm a plastic surgeon and I practice in Dallas, Texas.
And I'm Mary Catherine Thampi. I am the founder and personal stylist of Mary Monarch. Our mission is to bring women together in a supportive network for help with business, entrepreneurship, relationships, and more.
You are listening to Ladies Who Lead podcast, where we will share real conversations with real women who inspire us. Our guest today is Judene Hylton Emehe. She is a law school graduate who pivoted into a career as a professional recruiter for C-suite level executives. Listen in to hear Judene share her story about how she transformed her law degree into a career better suited for her strengths. We hope you enjoy this conversation. You are listening to Ladies Who Lead podcast.
Judene and we met in college, we're teenagers, and so much of this that she's accomplished has transpired while we were living our parallel lives, apart from each other. But I'm actually really excited to talk to you because it's the first time that we can literally just sit here and talk to you about what you've been doing and what you've accomplished in your adult life since college, which is cool because we don't often really just sit down and get into it.
Yeah. Kind of just like catch up and how are you doing and
gossip.
Talking about the past and the present, but
we reminisce and it's fun. But I think this is going to be really fun to hear about what you've been doing and how you got to where you are, and hopefully we can help inspire some women who are on a path and need a little encouragement.
Tell us some more just about your career journey, what you're currently doing, and what your title is, and how you got to be where you are.
Yeah, so I'll tell you about the right now, and then I'll tell you how I got there. It's bumpy road to get to where I am. But I essentially work in executive recruiting. People will hear the word recruiting and think you work for an organization and you work in HR, but this is a separate entity firm that specializes in hiring C-suite leaders. There are probably maybe 8 or so top firms in the country, like Korn Ferry, you may have heard of, or even there's quite a few other, Russell Reynolds. But I work for a smaller sort of version of that boutique firm called Koya Partners, and it's owned by a diversified search group. And what they specialize in is hiring women, which I think is awesome, and elevating women's career and people of color. So that's kind of where we're known for that. I work as a managing associate, so I work on a team, and then my superior is someone who just does business development. So she's not recruiting, this person's not on the phones. I'm doing that, but I'm also bringing in business to the firm too. So I'm, maybe pitching business with someone from Houston or the YMCA or some nonprofit in the US. And then I'm taking that, if I win the business, I'm taking that business, carrying that out, and then recruiting the top senior leaders across the country. So it's a national firm based in Boston, and I was hired in the Chicago office, and that's what I do now. And it's at home, which is great. I work from home.
That's incredible.
We've slowed down on travel, but typically you travel to meet clients and engage with them. So that's my career in a nutshell, with some DEI training and so on.
I can't think of a more perfect career for you because if I could summarize you and who you were, when I met you as a teenager, you were always so good with people. And it doesn't matter what circumstance it was or how bad of a day you were having. Judene was always the person who could engage like professionally and like warmly and make people feel loved and welcome, and strangers at that too, which is such a gift. So it's cool to see you in a career. I feel like it was made for you.
Oh, thank you.
Can you tell us how you kind of got to be where you are and how that journey looked?
Yeah. So leading up to that, I don't think anyone goes to school and says, I'm going to be a recruiter. That's just, it's not. I think looking back on where we started, and Lindsey was there with me, I was pre-med. That was the direction. Somewhere in healthcare, whether it be a physician assistant or a doctor, that's where I started. But once I realized I could barely pass OChem, I was like, well, let me pivot into something else that's probably a little bit more natural for me. And that was communications and political science. So once graduation from Grove City, which we probably will talk about a little bit, I went to law school. I graduated and actually worked in higher education where I was still doing kind of like recruiting of students to the college and, touring in the country and going to college fairs and all that, just, extroverted type work and got a lot of experience doing that. Well, I knew I wanted to do more. I wanted to go on to grad school and I chose law school and got in and moved to Chicago and went to school in Indiana, not far from the Chicagoland area. And from there, graduated in 3 years, but wasn't quite satisfied with the decision about going to law school and being a lawyer. Had a tough time with that bar exam. I mean, it was, I don't know if like nearly as tough as the boards, but it's still very tough. I'm sure medical exams aren't any easier. I took it once, I took it twice and came really close. But I mean, it was the exhaustion of like 2 years of studying and losing time. And I kept kind of, as I was practicing for the bar or studying for the bar, I was looking at other careers simultaneously. Like, okay, if I don't become a lawyer, what else is out there? And I was sort of kind of recruited into a position at a small, not small, actually sizable legal search firm called Major Lindsey in Africa in Chicago. And they reached out to me and I applied for a job there and got a recruiting role, recruiting general counsel and anyone sort of at that higher level lawyer positions at a firm or at an organization internally. So that was my first sort of step to doing recruiting. Took the bar again while I was applying for that role. Didn't pass it, missed it by like a couple points. And I think I just gave up. I'm like, all right, this is maybe a sign. My family, immigrants, they still think you should still take the bar. I'm like, it's been 10 years. It's been a decade. Maybe that's a sign to move something else. But I still use that JD though in so many ways. It really helps me get jobs, and I think it helps with getting in front of the right people and just kind of gives me like street cred in the executive search world. So that's how I ended up in recruiting. And from there I've moved to executive firms and, moved on. My path is taking me to different firms and internally in their organizations and law firms, kind of a little bit of everything. But that's how I started and then really ended up at Koya Partners and it's been probably the best plan or best move since I started the world of recruiting. So yeah, did not plan to do this, but got into it and be able to merge the world of law and the business of law and search, and then now sort of open up the door to more broadly executive search of all sorts of backgrounds and in careers. So
it's so interesting. I feel like this comes up a lot, that you have like one thought in your mind of how your life is going to go and how you're planning your career and what you're going to choose to do. But it really comes down to what doors are open for you and what doors are closed. And it's just amazing to see, like in hindsight, in the moment, it can be so hard and feel like such a failure and like defeat, to not pass a big test like that. But in reality, what's happening is that you're being led into something that's like better for your gifts and for your talents. And, you get your doors open in the right places and they close in the right places. And that can be such a hard thing to stomach at the time. And then later you look back and you're like, oh, I'm exactly where I need to be.
I believe that. I believe it. Not to beat yourself up because of that change in your career and change in your path. I believe that wholeheartedly. Yeah.
Because I can only imagine, how you felt and the grief you felt. I know that rush of anxiety when you open up a test result and a score result, and in the moment it means absolutely everything to you. And it's very life defining. And I feel like you could have taken that so badly, but instead you just transformed yourself and took open doors and you kick ass at your job and you do something that is just so good for, I don't know what you were made for, your innate talents.
I think so. There are days I still think, what if I had taken it a third time and practiced for a bit to see? I like to have the options and have the door closed because I closed it rather than it being closed.
Right.
But it didn't work out that way. And I still think things still went in the right direction. But there are days I'm like, what would it have been like to see that exam result saying you passed and not knowing who cares how many points you passed, and then being able to then apply and work for a law firm. But A lot of lawyers hate working as lawyers anyway, so.
I was going to say, no offense to lawyers, because Lord knows we need them, but you never struck me as a lawyer.
You need them, but they seem stressed. I'm good.
Yeah. Right.
You may be so much better off and so much happier because of that door, not walking through it.
And I heard you say the word pivot. And I just think you pivoted so positively and gracefully, and that's huge. And so can you kind of go into that on how you pivoted and what are some things that helped you in the pivot?
Absolutely. I think I leaned into the strengths I had into my degree as well. The way it really worked out nicely was I was able to pivot into a career that wasn't so far away from the community that I had built. Going to law school, as you know, going to med school or even any kind of grad school, you meet people, they start to become your peers. So pivoting into legal search, I was working with a lot of the same people I went to law school with, people I maybe interned with. And so the community was the same, but my career, my role was different. And so I got kind of lucky in being able to still move into a lateral role that was still connected to the legal world and being able to sort of leverage that. So I think community, number one, was really helpful. The knowledge that I went to law school was helpful in that first career out of law school. Those things helped. I think absolutely a big part of my and continued success is networking. Like, I'm not afraid to pick up the phone or email, connect with people. That's how you get the job sometime. That's how you get the opportunity. So it was a bit of kind of all of that helped me to make that pivot. Not seamlessly. It was still tough. I mean, it was still a tough industry to enter. But that really helped. The connection from law to the business of law and recruiting.
In regards to what you're doing now, I know your job now is you help recruit women and you help recruit women of color. Were you always in that recruiting business, or did that come to be after you were already in recruiting?
That kind of came naturally because I think a lot of the work I did when I worked at Major Lindsey in Africa, that first sort of, career move out of law school, a lot of my peers were Black women lawyers. And I ended up in spaces and places with a lot of women of color, men of color too, but particularly women in leadership that were, VPs and GCs. And that was kind of the space I was in and really loved it and felt like I was actually inspiring for me, totally. And being able to work with them. And it was awesome also to see a lawyer who's got like 15 years look at me as the key or that token to get into that big firm. Since then, I feel a joy and excitement working with women in general, and knew that in my career, if I'm going to be a recruiter, that demographic. It's women of color, people of color. There's who I want to work with. They are who I want to help and
incredible.
Give awesome careers.
Is it acceptable for us to talk a little bit about our experience in college?
Yes, it always is.
Can we go into that and the race issues? Yeah. And are you open to talking about that?
No, you know me, girl. I know.
That is why I love you so much and why we clicked so quickly, because neither one of us, we're just like, we are who we are. Like, it is what it is. Take it or leave it. I'll tell you, I'll share my perspective of how it was moving to Pennsylvania for college from Atlanta, a community. Atlanta is so racially diverse. Mary Catherine is from Memphis. So Southern girls. Judene is a Southern girl at heart. I think her DNA is from even further south than us. So
that's true.
She's a Southern girl.
You are a Southern girl.
And I grew up in Atlanta, where I kind of had the concept that in Hollywood, I think, and just in the news in general, people kind of talk about the South as being a little bit backwards, a little bit behind the times in regards to race and division. And so I kind of thought I was growing up in a little bit of a backwards place. But to be honest, in my own personal life, I did not experience it. And I understand that I was sheltered. I was raised in a Christian home where my parents believed that racism was sinful. Like, that's not a godly thing. So in my home, I wasn't exposed to any negative words about anybody based upon what they looked like, where they came from, what their skin color was. And then our circles that we were in were similar. And then because I lived in Atlanta, to be honest with you, I probably had more friends that were not white than I had friends that were white. And it's of any color. Like, you just pick a spot on the map, and I had a friend from there. I didn't think that that was different at all. That was the norm. And then I moved to Pennsylvania for college, Western Pennsylvania in Amish country, where it is cornfields. It is pretty country. But for the first time in my life, I witnessed really bold racism at our college, which was a good college that was hard to get into, full of kids who were all the valedictorian of their schools. And I quickly became known as the girl who was friends with the black girl. It was Judene. And I got labeled a lot of nasty things because they saw pictures of me and my friends in Atlanta, and they weren't white. And I, for the first time, not only witnessed that, as myself, but I got to see what Judene had to live through firsthand as, besties in college. And I was blown away. At that point in my life, did not know that level of blatant racism in a young generation still existed. I thought it was previous generations, and that everybody was kind of learning and growing and evolving, and everybody was becoming a little bit more, acquainted with each other. And that's just, how we were. Like, oh, we young people, like, we get it. Like, people learn, they mesh, like, it's, it's getting better. But it was people our age that it was, I witnessed that, and that is something I will never forget. So I don't even know what to ask you, because it's such a big topic.
Yeah.
But maybe just share something about how it was to be in that situation, but also how to encourage young women of color how to navigate that, because you did it, in my opinion, with an enormous amount of grace. I never saw you be ugly or react ugly towards anybody, despite being in very challenging situations.
Yeah. Well, you know what? It goes back to my upbringing. You talked about your upbringing, Linz, and like how that affected your sort of perspective and worldview and shaping your lens, right? I think the same for me. My family came from, a small island to the US to Indiana, of all places, right? First, and that culture shock for them helped them to kind of know how to navigate through the ugliness of racism in the US. And I saw that myself, and I learned how to deal with that with grace. So it wasn't so much a shock to me as it might have been for another Black girl from, say, like Philly, or from a larger city like Dallas, or somewhere else around the US where she's not the only Black girl. So I went to school with mostly white kids, didn't have a ton of issues in high school, some in middle school. I remember some like micro as well as macroaggression towards my siblings and I. So it's kind of like used to the strange, I guess we'd call it, not to bring politics into this, but probably Trump land is where I lived, like Ohio, Indiana, like old, steel mill dead cities where people are not used to seeing people of any color, much less Black people, right? So coming from that in high school, middle school, going to Grove City, it wasn't that daunting. I kind of knew what I'd expect. I kind of saw it coming. And I think I dealt with it by knowing that I know who I am, right? I know who I am. I know where I'm going. I know I'm at Grove City for a few years and I'm going away. I also know that, I hate to say it, I'm better than a lot of these people.
Yes,
I love it. Yeah.
Wait, I know you're not supposed to say that, but I know that I've got like some really good stuff and who I am, and like the stock I come from and where I'm going, and all the experiences I've had and all the friends I've made. And you know, I always said I'm going to end up going to a grad school or maybe where I live that is a metropolitan where I won't have to deal with this BS.
Mhm.
It was odd, it was frustrating, but I almost felt sorry for them. I felt sorry for them.
Yeah,
They come
and
from
that's maturity.
yeah,
Sounds like
they did. Because they're not going to experiment. They come from small towns. They all got married when they were 22, right out of college. They're going to, marry their partners that look just like them and have kids that look just like them. Like
Mhm.
it's not a whole lot of flavor going on in your life. So
Yeah.
I'm not feeling bad. I mean, I got style, I got grace, I got charisma.
Uh-huh.
I'm going places. And it was frustrating, but I felt sorry that their worldview and perspective and experiences were so small. Small town, small school, just small. They couldn't even
Yeah.
tell me apart from the other black girl. There's one other black
No,
girl who is my
who looks
complexion,
nothing like you.
and she looked nothing like me. And
Wow.
they thought I was in their sorority. I was just I feel sorry for you all that y'all are that ignorant. So that's how I looked at it. And I think, and I'll stop here and say, I dealt with some things also in the workforce and still do sometimes. Not as much, thankfully, but I think Grove City kind of reared me for corporate America. Honestly, y'all, like
Give you
it
some
didn't get better. Yeah, it didn't get better.
give you some experience
Yeah.
in how I don't know. It's like you can't control how people are, but you can control how you react, I guess,
Mhm.
but to keep your own mental health and your own peace of mind.
Exactly. Exactly. Yep.
What do you think about what you've been through and the world that you live in? And right now you're pregnant and you're about to bring a child into this world. How do you encourage your child?
Yeah. I think it's the same. I think it's the values I grew up with. I think it's really knowing yourself, not being so quick to fight back when someone is antagonistic towards you, but really walking to a room thinking and not thinking, knowing you belong there. I walk into every room, whether I'm shopping at, Yves Saint Laurent or I'm at going into a corporate board meeting. I walk into a room believing I believe that I belong there. And so I think number one is knowing who you are and believing you belong in the spaces that people may think you don't belong in. I think number two is I think armoring yourself as well, especially a young black boy. I'm having a boy and he's black in America. That's going to be a whole nother, I mean, probably more challenges for him than for me as a black boy. So that'll be another set of like tools I'll have to equip him with.
Mhm.
But I really think it's treating people the way that they want to be treated. And, even though you're being mistreated or being prejudged, it's still walking in the room believing that you belong there. And I think it's not your job to change people's minds, but it's your
No.
job to still be who you are and who we've raised you to be. So, I don't believe in the whole like um, cuss someone out, flip someone out, put someone in their place verbally. You're proving what people believe about Black people or about people of color or whatever it is. So it's more of a grace. It's education thing, right? You come to the room, you know your stuff. If you're leading a discussion, you know your stuff. You've done your research, and you've done your best to prepare yourself, regardless of who you're facing. So that's me. I'm probably more of a passive type. A lot of people say, "Oh, yeah, you're very much more passive, Judene," but that's what's worked for me, and that's what works for my family. Will
I've
work.
never seen you as somebody who was passive. I've just always seen you as somebody who was confident enough in themselves that they didn't have to control the narrative by forcefully saying something. But I think you're also not like a doormat or a pushover. You're not somebody who avoids things. You've always just handled it with a lot of grace.
Yeah.
And like you said, you're not going to change them. And also, you're confident in who you are. I think your parents, I'm sure, helped you a lot setting you up with that. I mean, your parents are immigrants. It takes a lot to be an immigrant, it takes a lot of courage. And they clearly did their best in raising y'all. And just having that background and that foundation, and then having so much confidence just from within that it doesn't really, you're not defined by how people are reacting to you or how people are treated by you. But I think it's one of your gifts, because I know it's hard and you choose to do that, but you've been so good at that since I've known you. in times where a lot of people are immature and it takes them years to develop that.
I think the last thing I'll say, and I appreciate Lindsey, is but then if someone does step to me incorrectly, don't get it twisted now. I'm not that nice. People hear something. So I think it's defending yourself. And that goes for women, that goes for people of color, that goes for anyone. You just that self-respect still, right? So but thank you. I appreciate that.
That is incredible. And such a testimony and example for all the younger women that you're paving the way for.
Can we talk a little bit about fitness and how to stay healthy and what you've done at the different phases of your life, like how you've stayed fit throughout the different challenging things like law school and your career and pregnant?
It's harder now. I look back on pictures and I'm like, gosh, those were the days. I'm just then. But I really, fitness has been a huge part of my life for a long time. And I don't remember if I did a lot of running in college. I think I did more in law school and high school and through, but I've always been a runner. And I believe one of two of you are runners too. Really, both of you are really active. I've always put a lot of emphasis on staying healthy. So the gym regularly, eating healthy, long distance running and yoga have been my sanctuaries for a long time.
I hear you.
There was a yoga studio in the middle of Cornfield, Indiana, and it was the best. I mean, it was one of those real yoga studios that someone like sweat. It wasn't the crew like like a Y6 or
right?
Yeah.
It was a real yoga studio. Incense and all of that, the gong, and it was amazing. And I think that was like my peak fitness was probably law school, like 2012, 13, 10 years ago.
Your time.
Right? And just using that as like it goes so fast, right? Like mental health, wellness, fitness, and I've always been a healthier eater, not so much right now, but usually a healthier eater. Because I believe that food is fuel. Food is fun, but food is fuel, literally. So I have up to this point done a lot of intermittent fasting that has literally changed my life and helped me. I think also is like even like the way I drink and celebrate like much like moderation over the years. But then I think during the pandemic is when I decided to become yoga certified. 2020, 2021, I think it was, still in the thick of the pandemic. I got certified virtually, which was interesting, and taught a little bit at Y6 in Houston, and have since, of course, stopped teaching. But I think yoga and running have been my jam for a long time. And of course, the gym and weightlifting. So those are my two loves.
And I can relate to that as well. Those are my two happy places.
It's awesome.
And interesting, I got certified during the pandemic as well. But I want to hear, how was your teacher training and going through that process? What did you learn, obviously about yoga, but about yourself as well in that process?
Yeah, that was a beautiful process. So cool. And a lot of inward thinking and stillness and silence and mindfulness, and self-confidence too. I learned a lot about, the way that well, first and foremost, I learned how to be still. I learned how to be still and listen.
That's hard.
Yeah, really hard. Especially because I think all of us before the pandemic we were moving and grooving in places and all over the place, including my busybody, very much. But once I got into that yoga teaching program, it was a lot of stillness and listening and learning. And I learned a lot. I learned that I tend to be a perfectionist. I tend to be, I don't even a perfectionist, I'm hard on myself. And what I'd hear a lot is that yoga is practice. Yoga is practice. It's not perfection. Your move or your own way of teaching or posture may not look exactly like your neighbors. So the lack of, not comparing yourself, not looking for this perfect pose. You are going to do it in your own style and your own way, sort of in a way. So it taught me to really kind of accept the way that I am, love myself more, just slow down. It really, I think more than anything, it taught me how to slow down and listen and learn. I took a lot from the breath work, and from mantras. those are probably my two. And then started to meditate. Never meditate before teaching or before the teacher program, but learn to meditate and find stillness. And I look forward to teaching, though. I will say, I mean, it's expensive. You want to at least use it, but I would love to want to do like put it back into the
Yeah.
ethos and start teaching again.
It's such a good reminder that it's practice, right? It's not
Yeah.
perfection. And just to give ourselves grace, which you do so beautifully already. But that's something that really resonated with me as well.
Yeah, that's awesome.
And just showing up, and like you said, showing up and just being still and being present. You know, that's why it's a gift. It's the present, right?
Yes.
And that's something I learned was being still, because that's very challenging for me. I cannot sit still. But that's something that really I resonated with as well. And there's a lot of power in being still.
How did you do your teacher training?
Great question. So the first half of it was virtual.
Okay.
Because
cool.
It launched in May 2020.
Oh, wow.
And then if you were comfortable for the second half, you could come into the studio. They would space this out, obviously at a safe distance. Yeah. We had our little spots they laid out for us, right? And that's when we did the physical part, and then the practice your teaching and all of that.
What a wild time.
What a time. It
So
seems
wild.
like 20 years ago, but it's really only 4 years ago, right?
That's crazy.
Wow.
Who
Yeah.
did you do your training with? I'm just curious what company.
Yeah. So it was through a studio here in Dallas called Gaia Flow Yoga.
Okay, nice.
Yes.
Yeah.
So but I taught for a while. I'm kind of taking a break now, just being a student again and learning. But I did teach for about 2 years. I loved it. It was just kind of a way to give back, because yoga was something that really helped me in my life during a challenging time, and that's kind of how I found it. It was really healing, and so it was just really a way for me to give back. But I'm a student again, still learning. But I might go back one day.
Yeah.
The studio actually talked to me this week. It was like, hey, if you ever want to come back, you know.
How cool.
Yeah. They're like, we'll work with your schedule. So it might
that would
happen.
be amazing. That would be
At some
incredible.
point. So.
If I'm in Dallas, you're teaching, come take a class. That'd be
Oh,
great.
yes, it'd be so fun.
Yes, that's
I
great.
love yoga. I think
Great.
what you were saying, Judene, about how it's not a sport. It's but it's something that you can show up and be wherever you are, whoever you are, with whatever body limitations that you have on your mat. And it doesn't matter, because everything is kind of contained to your mat. And I don't think there's anything else like that,
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. It's hard to find others.
It is. And when you said it's not a sport, I grew up playing sports. So it was very difficult for me at first to do yoga, because I was like, are we competing? Like, who's in first? Like, do I need to work harder? And I'm so competitive. That's just nature, because I grew up playing competitive sports. You know, I had all brothers, so everything was a race, right? And so they're like, no, this is not how yoga works. I'm like, oh, okay. So it took me a little while to kind of adjust.
Yep.
But that's something I actually love about it. It's like the one space in my life that you can just be and accept who you are and grow in that space.
Really, same. We sound like we similar background. All brothers. I played football and track. So it was like, I want to do the handstand better than her. It's like, Judy,
That was me. Yeah.
handstand girl, don't even try. Stop.
I think the mental health component of it is just so big. The gym has always helped me. Like, I've always felt like a completely different human leaving the gym than I have going into the gym. But there's nothing like that post-yoga feeling, because you feel like you've gotten that like mental rest and like focus at the same time.
It's so good for you.
And to the mental aspect, the mental health part, it has really changed my life in so many ways. I feel like it's helped me with anxiety. It's helped me with focus. But I feel like I find myself processing so many things in life when I'm on my mat. It's like a safe space.
Oh, yeah.
And I have so many aha moments in a yoga class. I'm like, after yoga, I'm like, I've decided what I'm going to do next. I got it. Like, it's just, you're in that zone. It's safe. You can think clearly. There's just
You
something.
have more blood going to your brain.
Yeah.
Clears all that gunk out. Now
It does.
clearly.
The fog, you know?
Oh, that's it. Yeah. Totally agree.
Are you able to do any yoga pregnant, or at this point are you tapped out?
So I'm doing yoga every other day at home. I was going to a studio, but I used to do prenatal yoga, and I do some of the moves that I was doing before,
Mhm.
which don't affect like the bump, right? Or just like maybe
Mhm.
do like a triangle pose, or I can still do like downward dogs, but I'm doing yoga at home, like gentle yoga, so gentle. I'm like, oh God.
I think that's great for being 8 months pregnant. Like,
I'm so
I think it's okay that you're just doing 20 to 30
I'm
minutes
still so
of
blown
yoga.
away. Yeah.
This is like the
Fine.
overachiever in all of
See,
us that
we're
we're
all the
like,
same.
Yeah.
you're like, oh, I'm not running a marathon. I'm not running a half
Yeah. Like, what's
marathon.
going on? Yeah.
I'm
20
only
yoga.
doing yoga every morning.
Yeah.
I have friends that are like, girl, I don't work out at all. You're
Yeah.
pregnant.
Yeah.
It's so
I
overachiever,
used
yeah.
to, before I started yoga, I had no intention of starting it because I saw it as like a wimpy thing. I was like,
Yep.
why am I going to waste my precious time doing yoga? I need to be burning calories, building muscle,
Yeah.
like lifting weights, like doing something
Mhm.
like hardcore.
Yeah.
And then I realized that if I cross train and I do yoga with some other sort of like physical activity, I'm actually in the best shape when I do that. It's like,
1,000%. I ran my best half marathon
Yep.
when I did hot yoga 5 days a week and maybe ran once a week.
I believe it.
I'm sure you can relate to that too.
Totally. Your
Yeah.
legs are so strong. They're so strong to run and
It's all glute.
Yeah.
all connected. Yeah. Can't agree with you more.
You know what my favorite is when like a girl brings like her boyfriend, or like a group of girls
Yeah.
bring like these boys to class, and they come in and they're like all tough. And you see all these
Yeah.
like women, and some of them are like, 50, 60, 70, and the boys walk in, and then by the end of the class, they are just like annihilated.
Right. I love it.
Women are strong.
I love it. We are. They get shocked every
Really?
time. Yeah.
Yeah.
What is this? Shaking and sweating. There's a pool of sweat. They're like
Yeah.
dying. Yeah, it's challenging. It's not
It
easy.
is.
It's not easy, but it's so feels so good after that yoga high.
You said something earlier about comparing,
Yeah.
and that's something that I think yoga has been helpful for me. Is I'm only comparing myself to myself. You don't look at anyone else, right? I'm just gonna grow myself and
Mhm.
accept how that growth is with no judgment, right?
Mhm.
Um,
Yeah.
and so
Yeah, it's true. It's like, how am I today compared to like yesterday? Like I did a class yesterday, last night actually, and then I did a class this morning. And this morning I was kind of mad at myself for a little bit because I was fatiguing out. And then I was like, okay, I did a class literally 12 hours ago. So maybe I should accept the fact that my body is going to move a little bit differently this morning compared to last night when I was fresher. And then I just let it go, and I still push myself really hard, but I also within reason gave myself a little bit of a break to
Yeah.
like maybe not be so crazy and require myself to be 100% full steam ahead at all times,
give
every
yourself
single workout.
grace.
Teacher will also say, like a good teacher will say to you, feel free to move at your own pace.
Mhm.
And they'll kind of signal, you can freestyle in some of these moments too. Doing identical what I'm doing and mirroring, not always necessary.
Can we talk and catch up and gossip about your husband and your marriage and meeting your husband and how you met him? Because the last time you and I were physically together, it was in Dallas. Judene came to Dallas. She met my husband for the first time.
Yeah, I love Paul.
And
he's great.
we went to brunch and had a great time. And Judene was still single Judene.
Yes, very
And
simple.
now
Yeah.
Judene is married and about to have a baby next month.
Makes sense. I think about it all the time because I was like, we had brunch. I was in Dallas. I know I was there, and
Yeah.
he set me up with someone he knew. That was the last thing he said. He's like, you need a husband. I'm like, I know, I need a husband.
I love it.
I found one like 6 months later and then got married. Crazy. So, I mean, I'm trying to think about the timing of everything. So Ozzy and I, his name's Ozioma, but he goes by Charles too, and he's from Nigeria originally, but he's been here in the US for a long time. Originally, we met in February of 2022 on Hinge and connected, but we didn't get serious like boyfriend, girlfriend right away. We were dating. And I was dating other people too. It was just like really fun. Like I had come to a place in life where I'm like, love will find me. I'm not gonna go crazy about trying to find this in a new city, new place. I wanted to meet a lot of people. But over time, we just kind of were inseparable. We spent a lot of time together. We had a great friendship, traveled to Austin together, did San Antonio. I'm like, what's going on here? Like clearly this is more than just like us being friends and like having a love connection. But over time, I what was it? I think that really kind of like made everything pivot. I went to Dubai with some girlfriends, still single. Went
I
to
remember that trip.
Dubai
How fun.
and went there and had a good time and, left him behind and any other guys I was dating. But I came home and he was like, I really realized I care about you a lot. In fact, I love you. I want to be with you. We spent, this most of this year together and, I want us to be together. And at first, it's so weird, you guys, because I was old Judene would be like, yes, of course I'll be your girlfriend. Of course. Like it wasn't that desperation. It was kind of like, let me think about this for a minute, actually, because I was dating someone else. He was great too. And just, having to make a decision, like, is this the person that I want to be with and spend time with? Seriously. And I heard from God. I heard from, like close friends who had met him. And I felt in my heart it was the right thing to do. And it was a quick progression. He literally was like, my timeline is I want to get engaged to you by the end of this year. I want to be married to you by the next year, and start a family. And that's what I want. That's where my intentions are. He made his intentions known. And I also,
I love that.
yeah, it was simple as that. And I also, I loved him too. We just knew. And it was a very quick progression. I mean, we got engaged literally at the end of that year. Crazy. When I tell this story, it doesn't make sense. It sounds insane.
No, I love
Got
it.
engaged, got married 6 months later, last June, and the rest is history. But I really think it was just like a knowing. I also think it was like our age too. Like you do come to a point where you're like, this person truly does have the things I'm looking for.
Yeah.
No, I love them, but there's something deeper and there's a value match and a faith match and all these things that make sense. And by the time you're in mid late 30s, you should know what you want. So it's been great. He's like my best friend and he's an amazing person. It has been easy. And Lindsey, I remember you saying, I think it was back when you met Paul for the first time, you're like, it's supposed to be easy. Like it's supposed to, and even when you were single, you were like,
Yeah.
I'm gonna work for this. It's supposed to come easy, at least at first. Yes, there's work in relationships.
Of
Yeah.
course.
That person, it shouldn't be this fighting when you're dating. It's supposed to be. And I always stuck close to that. So that's kind of like what it's been now. And best friends, and we're about to move into a house in a couple months and have a little child. And it's been easy. And I believe
Incredible.
God brought us together. So that's our story. It's a quick one, but that's it.
So,
Yeah.
I'm gonna cry. This is so beautiful.
Aw.
I like the part where you talk about how it was also a decision you had to make too, because a lot of times when you're talking about like finding the person, finding your like life partner, meeting somebody, being with them, dating them, it's not always as clear as it's supposed to be. It's interesting to hear about like your thought process and how you kind of chose him. Like you chose him first,
Yeah.
and then you went down that path of now this is my person and they're my soulmate, and then you develop that soulmate connection and bond.
That is exactly how I describe it. Rather than we fell in love and we knew from the very beginning, and it was it was a really mature decision, but I also felt in love with him. It was both, but it wasn't this just fell into it. It was a decision, and we're still deciding every day. And I'm falling more in love with him every day. So
When you're older, you can have those feelings, but they don't have as much stock with you because you can be like, oh, well, I've seen what those feelings have like done for me in the past. You can have strong feelings, but that doesn't equal the relationship that you're supposed to be in. Choosing your partner very carefully, really making that a decision that you make, not something that passively happens to you. I think it's a huge blessing. I met my husband when I was, 31, I think. Anyway, I was older than 30.
yeah.
And I think that was one of the great things. And there's benefits to, meeting people at different ages, but being a little bit older I was so confident in knowing what I didn't want And I didn't maybe so much know what I wanted, but I knew very strongly what I didn't want and what red flags were. And then similarly to your story, when I met Paul, he was very upfront with what he was interested in. He's like, I am very serious. This is what my intentions are. This is what I'm interested in. I'm not interested in casually dating. Like, you have the qualities I want. And that honestly pushed me away a little bit at first, because I was like, whoa, this is not anything I'm used to at all. And then I realized it was maturity in him, because he also was 30 years old and also knew what he didn't want and knew what he wanted. But not to talk about my relationship, what I really wanted to ask you is more, I think one of the challenges of starting a relationship in your 30s, or, you know, not in your young 20s or like teens, is you do that already having your sense of self and already having a very solidified identity and routine and hobbies and interests. And this is how I want my kitchen, and this is how I want my bedroom. What are your challenges, and how do you work with Ozzy on meshing two completely formed adult human beings as a new married couple?
Well, it's funny you say that, because it's so true, because we are two fully formed, like late 30 adults, and have lived single lives. I mean, he has been married before, but it was short-lived, and he's been mostly single, right? And it's been just years since he's been married. And of course, I've been single more than in relationship. I'm always a single girl. So coming together, two people with very different experiences and different cultures too. Luckily, Ozzy's very easygoing. Truly, he is very not malleable, but he is not so tough on one way to do things. So he's flexible, and we did a personality test before we got married, and he's much more flexible. I am too, actually. So we were both quite flexible in lifestyle and where we live and how we live, and he's very positive, half glass full. And so I think if anyone out of the two was a little bit more difficult, it'd be me.
And that's hard to believe, because you're just so easy to be around.
Thank you. Maybe not always easy to live with, but I think overall, we become really, really, really great partners in kind of merging lives together, because we both kind of fall on the scale of more flexible. I think like things like decorating, like I have a completely different style than his. It's maybe more specific in the way I want detailed our home decorated. So he'll let me run with that.
Perfect.
Right.
Love it.
Thank you. Food, diet. We
Yeah.
do eat differently. Like I mean, I do eat a lot of American foods and things like that. He eats very, very healthy. So sometimes I'll cook something, or we'll want to go out to eat, and he's like, I'm not gonna eat that. Like, I'm just not. I'm gonna he's like vegetables, meat, protein. Like, he's very into health and wellness. Sometimes I'm not. So there's things like that. I really don't think, when it comes to even like cleanliness and cleaning up, he's amazing at like doing his stuff and cleaning the place up. And we kind of still live
He
there
knows how to
because
do his own laundry.
he knows how to cook. He went to military school actually in Nigeria, and so you see that in the way that like even he folds, like things are just very tight. The bed is made. I'm like,
I love that.
Amazing.
what is going on? But because we are so new at this relationship, and we moved in really quick, we kind of keep things separately. Like, we have our own separate bathrooms. We do our own laundry. There's just certain things we just haven't merged all the way together, which keeps, I think, the sanity too. So
I mean, honestly, that sounds amazing. It sounds very manageable and doable.
That's what we'll probably do. Not perfect, but I think there's a lot of respect there too between the two of us and the way we live. So it's been working. It really has. Yeah.
I think for me, like, I think one of the biggest things with relationships is like having respect as the foundation. So being with a partner that you can respect kind of makes everything else doable if you can respect the person that you're with. Like, you can have emotions that are variable, or you can have disagreements, or not see eye to eye about something. But if you respect who they are and their character and where they came from, then I really think you can get through anything.
I think so too. Just checking in and asking them, like, he's not someone who will be very vocal where I am. And I'll say, hey, I saw the look you gave me with that. Do you not like the way I do that in the kitchen? Do you want me to clean up after He's like, yeah. He's like, you could clean up more after you cook. That'd be great. He's very clean. So just being respectful and doing check-ins. And if your partner is vocal, that's a whole nother thing. You'll know. But if he's not, checking in and making sure that the home is a place that you feel comfortable in. Both of you feel comfortable living in.
How has pregnancy been for you?
It started off pretty good, and overall it's been good. I'll admit we're at the home. What do you call it?
You're ready.
I'm ready. Like I'm definitely feeling it. The pull, the uncomfortable sleeping, the insomnia. It's been challenging at this latter end, but truly throughout, I've been in the gym, been doing yoga, I've been doing walks. I've traveled a little bit too. I really have been trying. I mean, I'm not like deadlifting like some girls on Instagram. Like they're like lifting heavy weights, big old but trying to stay active. Funny enough, haven't had any major crazy cravings. Like I haven't been that pregnant girl that's like, give me 10 pizzas and ice cream. I can really fit it. Like I'm eating a little bit more than I would. I have a sweet tooth. That's new for me, but really I cannot complain. Health-wise, I've been great. Baby's been good.
Yay.
I'm just it's the energy. It's going down. And when I saw your text, I'm like, let's do this now because I don't know where I'll be in like 2 months. But I think truly though, God has blessed me in this pregnancy because I'm 38 here in like a month. And so many girlfriends I know are pregnant actually right now, and they are struggling in the late age of their, late 30s being pregnant, and the energy and the mobility and all the feelings. And then what people who have all kind of health challenges during pregnancy. That's real. So I'm really blessed, honestly, but I'm tired. Like I'm getting there. Definitely.
I'm so proud of you though, because you're tired and you're 8 months pregnant, but you're still getting up and moving and doing yoga and working out. That is just, such goals, and you're just always a very inspiring person to be around. You're one of those people that it's like, you just, when you're around somebody and they just make you a better person because you're just that person in every way, and you're so real too. Like
yes.
The way about you, seriously. Yeah. None of this is perfect. I think like my mantra this year, I told myself is, I don't know if you know who Cicely Tyson is, and she passed away like last year or 2 years ago. And she was like 90 something years old, actress. And she'd been like every movie, Raisin in the Sun, like just a huge star. And they said to her, I think it was not Oprah, but Gail interviewed her. Gail King was like, what do you want to be known for when you pass away? What's your last thing you want to say? And she had died like a month after. And she said, I done my best. And like that for me is simple. I done my best. I do my best. I do my best. I done my best. And in places and spaces where you can do an excellent job, like do the excellent job. But there are sometimes it's just like, I did my best. Like I did my best. And that's how I feel
Once again, a lesson that yoga can teach you. If you're not convinced yet to do yoga, it's all about doing your best in your circumstance.
And showing up.
Yeah, exactly. I know some circumstances require like excellence, especially in the work that you do. But sometimes like in life, like in our personal lives, in our marriage or whatever we're doing, just like do your best. Sometimes it's just tired. Like life is hard. I'm like right now. Sorry.
I'm like, what day is it? What time is it? Am I here in the right place?
How are you?
It's so nice to catch up this way.
So good.
And I feel like I've known you forever. Just like
I know.
I love connecting with you.
Like such good energy. You do. Like I love Lindsey, but so I can see why the two of you are friends. Thank you so much for asking me to do this. It was awesome. And kind of like cathartic too for me.
Yeah.
Great.
It's like a therapy session.
It's so fun. Yeah.
I wish y'all all the best with this. It's so great. So great.
You have been listening to Ladies Who Lead podcast, hosted by Dr. Lindsey Tavakolian and Mary Catherine Thampi. Please rate and review this podcast wherever you are listening. You can stay connected with us between episodes by following us on Instagram at Ladies Who Lead podcast, where we share exclusive content and updates on future episodes. Until next time, we thank you for listening.